Joining us now is Democratic Congressman Adam Schiff. He's the top Democrat on the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence. That committee is investigating Russia's alleged hacking of the election. And with your investigative hat on, I want you to help us try to understand what Sean Spicer said about this at a briefing. Let's play the sound.
There is no reason that we have to think that the president is the target of any investigation whatsoever. The one question dealt with whether or not the tweet dealt with wiretaps during the thing. The other is an investigation. They are two separate issues. And there is no reason to believe that there is any type of investigation with respect to the Department of Justice.
I'm not really. That was a confused situation. He got handed a note during it. This has gotten very complex. You have the Russian allegations. You have the president injected the wiretapping allegations, which he could answer more quickly than you could. That's for sure. But he has chosen not to, according to Sean Spicer. But now you've decided to add that to your investigation. Why?
Well, and I think the way to interpret Sean Spicer's remarks is essentially, we have no idea what the president was talking about, so we're going to give this to Congress, and please don't ask us about this. But look, we've accepted that invitation from the president. We're going to have an open hearing on March 20th, where we're going to have the opportunity for Director Comey, Director Brennan, Director Clapper, and others to respond quite directly. If the press reports are accurate that Director Comey wanted the Justice Department to speak out on this, he will have the opportunity during our open hearing. We have also, the chairman and I, made a similar request as the bipartisan request in the Senate for any documents, any FISA court orders that would back up this claim.
The pushback is, why spend time on something that none of you believe is true? You've used the line, be careful what you ask for. What do you believe this could yield?
Well, here's what I mean by that. I think what Sean Spicer and the president wanted was to take this spurious claim and try to bury it in a closed hearing in the Intelligence Committee. We're not going to allow that to happen. We're going to air this very publicly. And if the president is going to make outlandish claims like this in the future, he needs to know he will be exposed. And high-ranking people within the U.S. government, like the director of our intelligence agencies and the FBI, will be forced to say the president wasn't telling the truth. If we don't confront him on this, you can expect he's going to make other equally false claims in the future. And this is not only hurting him, but it's hurting the presidency, it's hurting our credibility around the world, and this has got to come to an end. But I think there are profound questions about whether this president is capable of growing with the job.
So, all right, you're going to have it out there, and it will be part of a broader investigation about what connections there were. The pushback that you guys are getting is, yes, you have proof that there were contacts, but contacts aren't that unusual. You don't know what they were about. We've heard leaks from the intelligence community saying they have no proof of collusion. When will you know whether there's anything there between the administration of President Donald J. Trump and Russian efforts to subvert the election?
Well, you know, there's certain things that we know, I think, with great certainty already. We know, and it was described earlier in the broadcast as the alleged Russian hacking. We know the Russians hacked. We know the Russians were responsible for the dumping of documents. We know the Russians have also used a variety of techniques in Europe in the same way they have here. And in Europe, they have used native citizens of European countries. They've used blackmail. They've used extortion. We want to find out what else did they do, if anything, in the United States to influence our elections. And what we need to do is a expeditious but thorough and nonpartisan investigation to find out, are these contacts innocent, or are they part of collusion of U.S. persons in this Russian campaign? And I think that it should be in everyone's interest to get the truthful answers to those questions as quickly as we can. But, you know, I have to say this is difficult. This is an investigation, obviously, that goes well beyond our borders, that involves trying to get evidence from a hostile government. And we have to try to assess, what did the intelligence community do? What leads are left to be investigated? Right now, Chris, as you know, we're having trouble getting answers from the FBI about what they have investigated, and we're going to need their full cooperation, or this is going to be a lot harder and take a lot longer than any of us would like.
You said that you want to interview the man behind assembling of the dossier that wound up being briefed, that wound up being the subject of a briefing to President Trump and President Obama, you know, then President-elect Trump. Why?
Well, look, there have been public reports, and I can't comment beyond the public reports, that this is an individual that has been found to be credible by the intelligence agencies. If that's accurate, I think we ought to talk with him. I think we ought to find out, to the degree he's willing to share, what his sources of information are, so that we can try to go to those sources and verify whether materials in the dossier he put together are accurate or not. We ought to do our due diligence, and certainly I think what he has alleged in that report is very serious. Some of it ought to be capable of corroboration. Others, will be very difficult given the hostile environment it would take to work in Moscow and to try to prove or disprove things. But, he may be a key figure, and we'd like to know what he has to say.
I know that you're not going to tell me what the substance of it is, but have you come across anything yet that makes this more than a fishing expedition?
Well, absolutely. And let me say this. I think you can see from the public information already that, one of the byproducts of all this has been the resignation or the firing of Mike Flynn, the fact that Mike Flynn lied to the vice president in turn misled the American people about a surreptitious conversation with the Russian ambassador.
Congressman, how do you know Mike Flynn lied to the vice president? I know that's what the White House says, but do you know that that's what happened?
Well, I can't go into what we've been briefed on, but I do think that this has reached the point of ripeness where we need an independent counsel, not the current Attorney General, to make a decision about whether the facts are something that ought to lead to a prosecution.
But that would mean that you suspect there's an underlying crime, which would be what? I mean, if you're going to have an independent prosecutor, you need a crime. What's the crime?
Well, the question is whether the false statements of Mike Flynn in any form were prosecutable, and I think that's something
the FBI said that they weren't going to charge him, and they didn't think he was misleading, which is why I'm asking you the other question, by the way. The FBI gave the White House such great cover to keep Mike Flynn. They said, we heard the same story. He says he told Mike Pence, we don't think he was misleading. He may have forgotten it. He didn't think that the context of the election or the sanctions were relevant or a big part of the conversation with the Russian ambassador. So it was innocent. We're not charging him. We don't think he was misleading. And yet the White House chose to get rid of him. That's why I'm asking the question.
Well, no, it's a good question, Chris, but I'm obviously cabined by what I can discuss publicly. But let me make a few observations first.
Please.
The FBI hasn't said anything publicly about this. There have been reports of what the FBI is saying privately, but we don't know and don't have a public record about what the FBI's position is. And second, it's not the FBI's position to make a prosecutorial decision. That's a decision normally for the Justice Department. Obviously, we saw a big aberration with that last year when Loretta Lynch essentially said, I'm going to defer to the FBI about the Clinton case. But in the ordinary course of events, it is the Justice Department that makes a prosecutorial decision.
That's true.
The FBI presents whatever facts to the department. Here, you have Jeff Sessions saying, I'm recusing myself, but not from everything, only from things pertaining to the campaign. Well, the Flynn conversations with the Russian ambassador took place after the campaign. I don't think Jeff Sessions can make those decisions. I think an independent counsel ought to be reviewing these facts and determining whether anything in Mike Flynn's conduct should be prosecuted. I'd like somebody independent to make that judgment. I don't want to make that judgment. I don't want Jeff Sessions to make that judgment. But I do want someone that the public can have confidence to look at those facts and decide, yes, this is a prosecutable offense, or no, there's simply not enough evidence here.
Do you even have a guess how long it will take for you to get information that you can give the American people to substantiate any of this?
Here's the challenge, Chris, and I feel a real sense of urgency. I think we all do. But this is a very big, complicated investigation. I mean, after all, it involves a Russian hacking operation, all of the different cyber evidence that goes into that, the dumping of information, the use of cutouts, the use of WikiLeaks, the use of its propaganda arm, all of the issues that I think most people are concerned with about collusion. My GOP colleagues want to investigate the leaks. Democrats always also have a concern about leaks. We want to look at the U.S. government, the FBI response. Did they respond adequately when we knew the Russians were in our computers? This is not something to be done overnight. It can't be done overnight. And so I think people need to understand the magnitude of what we've taken on. This is not something we're going to be able to come to next week and say, okay, we've reached a firm conclusion.
All right, Congressman Schiff, thank you very much. I'm testing you on these things because the implications matter so much that we have to make sure that facts drive it all.